Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much for sticking with us, tuning into the last session. How's it look? It's got my screen share up a-okay. Slides are looking good.
I see here.
Awesome. Cool. Well, hey, thank you again and again, everybody. This has been a ton of fun. Kyle put on a great show. Dave put on a great show. Incredible to see Katie Nichols jump into the action, Deb Wigley, and Matt Lee. And man, now for the last track to play. Hey, session number 3 is hacking, hijinks, and DLL hijacks. We've got this last hour together, and then we'll kick off a little bit of a wrap up for Hack It. But I'm super excited about this one because we're going to get nerdy. We're gonna get a little bit technical. We're gonna start to fire off some code, see some of the exploits and CVEs and vulnerabilities out in action. But man, sometimes we do this show. In the past, it's kind of been Jason Slagle and I. We've got some old friends in the mix here and some new friends. So I am super duper excited to let Darold jump into the show here. And if I may, I know you're still jumping into some audio, but hey, I don't mean to dwell on too long, hey, introductions and who's who, but I think it is super important to establish a little bit of credibility. Darold, if you don't mind, would you be willing to, I don't know, hey, tell the folks about you, who are you, what are you up to, etc.?
Thank you very much for the invite. My name is Darold DJ Kelly Jr. It's an absolute pleasure to meet all of you today. I am the president and CEO of the Black Cybersecurity Association, a wonderful organization dedicated to one mission and one beautiful mission only, and that's increasing the number of beautiful Black people in cybersecurity. By profession, I'm a red team operator, so that's fun. I'm an early career red team professional. And so I just wanted to, that's just a little bit about me. Thank you so much for the invitation. Once again, I'm looking forward to today's event.
Awesome. Jason, I know everybody knows you, but do you mind, I don't know, tossing your hat in the ring?
Yeah. So I'm Jason Slagle. I look a little different than my picture. We just, like Wes, managed to raise a whole truckload of money for a whole bunch of charities. It was super fun, but now I keep doing this, and apparently it's a drinking game now, so I'll make sure I keep doing it during the talk. I am president of CNWR Inc. We're an MSP in the Toledo, Ohio area. Personally, I've been doing this quite some time, probably close to 25 years now. I've been doing some sort of IT thing. Got my start in the cybersecurity space running a Delnet IRC server back in the days, back when I didn't even know cybersecurity was a field that we could run in. So been doing it for a bit.
Also, an extra credential for you, my friend. You're the #1 winner and victorious throne holder of best rapper in the MSP community. You win the rap battle. Is that right?
Oh, that was pretty cringy. But yes, I did. The trophy is back there on my shelf. So it was fun. It was a good time. It was more nerves than this. At this point, man, if I can pull that off, then this stuff is easy.
Well, I don't have nearly as cool as a claim to fame, but hello. Hi, my name's John. I'm a fellow geek and nerd over at Huntress, and super excited to dive into this stuff with you. I'm going to let really the other two gentlemen kind of drive the show. Hey, the spotlight is on them. This is sort of for the community and by the community especially. But I will help tee things off here, if that's a-okay. We can dive right in. So, hey, we're chatting about some tradecraft, some attack techniques, some tactics that can be used, specifically DLL hijacking. We'll get into that in just a moment. We'll get some of those definitions and context out the door, because some folks might be wondering, what the heck are those words? What the heck is that acronym? So we'll dive into that, but then we'll chat about tools that you might be able to use to go about hunting for bugs or vulnerabilities or issues where that DLL hijacking problem is totally in place. We'll chat about some resources. We'll then get into the real fun stuff. I don't want to be lecturing and talking to slides for too long, so we'll be pivoting in and out of demonstrations, but we will be taking a look at real, actual vulnerabilities and genuine applications that you probably use. So we're going to be lighting off some cool fireworks with that, and then ultimately end on a little bit of a rallying cry. Like, hey, here's the call to action. Here's the message that we want to get out there. The more people need to be doing stuff like this. But with that, Darold, hey, the stage is yours, my friend. Do you mind just filling us in? What the heck is DLL hijacking?
So in a nutshell, basically DLL hijacking, without all the bells and whistles, it's basically the art of tricking a legitimate and trusted application to loading an arbitrary library and running arbitrary it's subsequently loading arbitrary code, and it's primarily used for execution persistence. And I think today's demo will be focused mostly on privilege escalation. That's pretty much it.
Cool.
Okay, yeah. So we'll talk about a number of techniques today. We'll demonstrate a couple. I'm super excited to have Darold here because he got to share the burden of putting demos together, right? So I got to take it a little bit easier this year, which is super exciting for me. No pressure, my friend. You should not have any. It'll be great. But we're going to cover or talk about 5 general techniques here today. I'm talking about them roughly in the order that I think they're used in. So the first one being a case where a DLL is just missing, right? So there's a lot of applications that can ship things with optional features, maybe debug features, and the way they gate whether or not they actually work is they don't ship the DLL. The application will look for the DLL, and if it's not present, it handles that error and it just moves on without it present. When you have things with plugins and other things like that, that's very, very common, right? And it's one of the most commonly used ways to actually pull this off in the wild. The second one is search order hijacking. John has a whole slide on this coming right up, but Windows maintains an internal list of where it looks for when it goes to load a DLL. And that list is in kind of a priority order. So if the application you're running uses one of the lower order ways of loading a DLL, you could just put yours above it. This requires a little bit of work. It's not always easy. You probably can't write by default to most of the places where these DLLs are going to live, or this would be a lot easier. But it is still a method that you see used. The third method is DLL replacement, which is exactly what it sounds like, right? We take an existing DLL in an application, we replace it. That will usually break the application. So what we end up using in this case is we use this method called DLL proxying, where we create a fake URL that basically has all of the same calls as the DLL we're replacing. And in every case but the case we care about, or DLL main, as we'll see here in a bit, we just proactively push that call down to the real DLL, right? So we can get in the middle between a DLL that's actually trying to be used and the application. Call our application, proxy stuff off where we need to, and move the rest back. The next one is search path, not to be confused with search order. When the very last thing in the search order that you'll see here in a moment is that Windows will actually look at your path, like $path, right? And one of the things about $path is you can manipulate that as a user, right? So if you have an application that is relying on a DLL being available in your path, you can put a writable directory in the path before it and drop your own DLL in there. That another relatively common, although is AppSec, and people get better at developing. This one's getting a little harder, but we still see it occasionally. And the last one is, it's more of a technique. I guess they're all techniques, but this is kind of chained with other things, which is relative path DLL hijacking, right? So in this case, we end up moving the executable to a directory we can write in if we can get it called from that directory instead, right? So I'm going to go to my Linux roots here, right? Imagine you have a SUID binary that's loading it's loading a library out of the current directory. Well, if you can just copy that library and maintain the SUID bit, you can put your own library there and do whatever you want. And from a abstract technique way, that's what we're trying to do with relative path DLL hijacking. And the demo that I show later that's actually one of the techniques in use here. In practice, many of the successful complicated attacks end up using more than one of these attack vectors at once. But we'll move it on to you, John.
Cool. Yeah, I'd love to zoom in a bit more on that sort of search order hijacking along with the missing DLLs. Because again, if you can put a DLL in a sort of higher priority place as to where Windows, your operating system, will look for these dynamic linked libraries, right? These resources and materials that a programmer application might use. Hey, you could fire this off. You could run your own code. There are a whole lot that this dives into. There is a bit of a long list here, about 6 different possible locations that might look for these libraries in, starting with, hey, the directory that the application's in, even the system directory itself, right? You know, C:\Windows \system32, the real core of the Windows install. They even have some stuff in the 16-bit system directory and just /system. I don't know how often you tend to see that one these days. I don't know if we're still rocking any 16-bit machines, really. But of course, you have the Windows directory, and the current directory is actually a bit of a big one. If you can keep the environment that this program runs through and from, might still be able to place some things present even in your working directory. And then directories listed in path. But I'll admit, all of the ones listed here are on the file system, right? Within your C:\/ drive. But oftentimes applications might not even check these and might go ask the registry first, the Windows registry, right? Hey, sort of some big dictionary configuration set, a book of settings and configurations and tweaks and changes that you might be able to make to your operating system. Note that for folks that might be familiar, you have different hives or chapters within that book of the registry, right? You've got HKey local machine, like the computer itself, this device, and that normally requires some of those admin privileges or hey, some actual privileges and permissions to be able to tweak and manipulate those. That might be one location, but zooming in and narrowing that scope a little bit more, there's HKey current user for your specific user account, or HKCU. Interestingly enough, oftentimes when an application reaches and looks for a DLL referenced in HKCU, if there isn't one there, then it will fall back to HKLM, the local machine. But if you can catch that and you note, ooh, I have a little opening in the current user's hive, you might be able to just reference, hey, where you want to put a DLL there. So that's a pretty peculiar one and very, very used and well known here. But with that, we can start to chat a little bit more as to how you find this and where can you see this search order being crawled and looked through for some of that DLL hijacking. Jason, I think you might be able to help kind of kickstart the conversation here. Process monitor, right, with sysinternals. Do you have any show and tell you might be able to do here?
Yeah, I can. So I'll talk about it a little bit. I presume that most people here are familiar in the MSP space with Procmon or Process Monitor. This is a tool written by Mark something. I can't say his last name, so I'm not even going to try. It is part of the sysinternal suite, which is a really, really, really cool suite of a ton of Windows tools that if you don't know about it and you're an MSP, you really should know about it and you should get to know it. It basically hooks into the kernel and looks for system calls, right? So if you're a binary and you need a resource from the operating system, you go ask the kernel for that resource, right? If you need to print something to the screen, put something in a file, look something up from the registry, you don't write that yourself. You go call a kernel function that performs those things. What Process Monitor does is it hooks into that subsystem and it logs all those things. And it is definitely a bit of a fire hose. I've used it a ton to both red and blue teaming things to look for things that I'm hoping to poke at, as well as a general troubleshooting tool. There are a number of applications that I have fixed by figuring out, oh, it's trying to load that library and now that library is corrupt, or, oh, it's trying to write to this directory and it no longer has permissions, and you just go fix it and then the application works fine. So again, it's a really cool process. I'm going to demonstrate here. If you can give me screen share. This is my little Windows box here that I'm messing with. So let me go ahead and start Process Monitor. Process Monitor does require elevation. I am logged in as an unelevated user. So I am going to go ahead and elevate so that we can run it. And we're going to let it go here. I'm going to set a couple. Actually, I set a couple earlier filters, so I'll leave them here and we can look at them. So in particular, when I'm looking for DLL hijacking is an easy way to start. So let's actually just uncheck all of these filters here. And I'm going to hit apply and then OK. And you'll see that it is definitely drinking like the fire hose. And I don't want to leave this running too long because unfortunately, if you see these little words down here at the bottom that are probably really tiny for most of you, it says backed by virtual memory. This machine doesn't have that much memory. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run the calculator, the Windows calculator. Yay, Windows calculator. And go ahead and run. And as soon as it opens, which will take a second on this VM, I'm going to go ahead and click this button here and stop capturing. Then I'm going to go reapply my filters. So I'm adding a filter here to make sure the path ends in DLL, right? Because we're looking for DLLs here. That makes sense. We have a second filter here for contains not found. And if you can see over here to the right, we've got a number of things here that are presently saying result not found, name not found. So we want to see those. And here, since I want to look at the calculator in particular, we're going to filter on process name, and I'll expand this here so you can see all those things, is calculator app.exe. So in developing this talk, one of the first things I learned is they renamed the calculator binary in newer version of Windows. I had previously thought it was calc.exe. But we can go ahead and apply an OK. And look at all of these DLLs that the calculator is attempting to load. And they are not found. We've got a bunch of user environment ones. We've got bcrypt up here, which was really odd. I was trying to figure out exactly what a calculator was doing loading bcrypt. But you can see we have a lot of potential targets here that we could look at just for DLL hijacking. Not all of them are viable. There's a couple of caveats that you have to consider here. The first one is that Windows internally maintains a list of known DLLs, and it will not use the search order for those known DLLs. The second is that if a DLL is already loaded into memory, it likely will not load into memory again, right? So if something else in that process is already loaded a good copy of the binary, Windows is not going to load it again. Fun fact, at one point or another, the actual calc.exe was actually injectable, which is why it's a good example to use here. I'm not sure if this new calculator app is, but yeah, that's process monitor in a nutshell.
Thanks so much. In case you, as the one looking for these bugs or vulnerabilities or issues, might be able to track down, I found an opening, I found an opportunity to load up a DLL that you might be able to customize. Oftentimes, you need that DLL to match what the program would be expecting, kind of that DLL proxying idea. Like, hey, meet the same criteria as what the application needs, but have your own custom code embedded in there, adding your own backdoor, right? So I'll be the first to admit, hey, this is a GitHub repository for a little bit of an older tool. I think this was last maintained in 2020. It is deprecated, is no longer maintained, but it's kind of neat. The backdoor factory written in Python 2. So again, hey, we can kind of get our digital tomatoes and pitchfork for that. But backdoor factory is honestly what we used when we were trying to carve together, one of those DLL hijacking attacks for some sweet software that we'll go ahead and showcase in a little bit. So if anything, hey, just as a heads up for you, a resource if folks are interested. And that was one of many tools that we took a look at. But Darold and Jason, you got a little bit more of a chance to play than I did. I'd love to get your thoughts on what else is out there.
Yeah, there's a number of tools that we looked at here, and I'm going to I think Darold actually has a demo of one of them he'll run through here in a minute. So while he gets that set up, I'll go ahead and give him a little bit of coverage here. I believe he looked at DLL Irint. It's actually a pretty cool tool. It is a .NET tool that it automates much of this work for you. I went through and I looked at a tool called Impulsive DLL Hijack, and I actually had this working, and I fed it some simple binaries and it worked just fine. It was nothing super exciting to do in a demo. And once I started feeding it more complex binaries, it kind of fell apart. It crashed in weird and mysterious ways. And red teamers, they write good code, but they don't believe in error handling. So when the thing crashes with any exception at all, it falls through to some weird case at the bottom and just gives you the usage line. So I just didn't have it in me to go ahead and try to debug that code. So I kind of moved on. I am familiar with and looked at DLL Spy and Robber. There are a couple of cool tools. Just didn't play with them for this round, but they're out there if you want to take a look at them. And we kind of starred these last two here because they're not really DLL hijacking tools per se. The first of them is WinPeas. One of the things WinPeas can do, if you're not familiar with it, I believe it stands for Windows Privilege Escalation as a Service. It basically is something you can run on an unescalated box, and it will tell you things that you can look at to maybe gain privilege. One of the things it looks at is potentially hijackable DLLs or software it knows has potentially hijackable DLLs. It also looks for areas in the path that you can actually write to. So if you have applications falling down to the bottom path and maybe you can't modify path for whatever reason, it gives you some ideas of places you can write to. The last one is a PowerShell module called PowerSploit. And this one has a interesting, unique superpower of being able to look at running processes and check them for exploitable or hijackable DLLs. And John and I, we kind of did this whole thing. I think it might have been the first hacket. Actually, we spent some time talking about living off the land, right? And what can we use that's already on the system to hide and persist. One of the interesting persistent mechanisms that you can get to is, rather than install your own scheduled task, your own service, or persist in any other ways, what if you took an existing service that was already running, that was injectable via DLL hijacking, wrote out a proxy DLL, and just had it call your DLL instead? Then every time that service ran, which is maybe whitelisted by, I don't know, some popular whitelisting software or any number of other things, it would run just fine. And then it would just call your DLL instead, proxy any calls over to the other one. And now you've obtained persistence. And I thought that was kind of cool. And I thought it was worthy of a shout out here. But I think we have a demo.
Yeah, Darold, I know you were playing with DLL IRANT. I'm more than happy to drop my screen share if you'd like to do some quick demos.
Absolutely. I'm ready when you are.
All yours, my friend.
Okay, so here we go. DLL IRANT. So this particular program, as you can see, here's the GitHub repository that was in the previous slide. This program is primarily written in C#. And so after getting everything all set up and drag some windows around to get it up and running, we did get this particular tool here that you can see on our screen, and we just want to make sure that we demo what is it for our audience here. What does an actual DLL hijacking attack look like? Or what you do is, or at least with this particular tool, you can select a privilege escalation file here at the top right hand corner. The particular application that we'll be using for this particular demo will be in Hyackings's endpoint manager. We can see a little, many of us may be familiar with this software, many of us may not be. Here's the version and the version of server information. I probably should have, anyways, this is what we're going to be using for this particular demo. And this is located in memory. Oh, I'm already here. Program files, Hyacking endpoint manager. We want to run it against this ITSM service. And the reason why we pick this particular service is because this is a service that's utilized by the endpoint manager. If we go over to our lovely, what is this called, a task manager? We can see, scroll, that the ITSM service is running system level privileges, and it's utilized by the endpoint manager service application. So our goal is to escalate our privileges using this particular application, this particular executable. So go ahead and skipping to the particular demo. Let's go ahead and open this up and actually hit this button that says find DLL hijackers. Do you want to search? You hit the yes, okay button, and we'll be seeing a lot of dialog boxes with a bunch of error codes. And the reason why is because every time you have a failed attack, you get this nice little dialog box that says, hey, look, it wasn't found. This particular, the application essentially broke somewhere. But you can see that here in the background, the application is running. Now, I'm not going to let it run for too long. And the reason why is because for each of the system calls that it tries, and here's the code, it's going to literally try all 200 and some of these DLL hijacks, and I don't want anyone to have to sit through that. That's going to probably take hours. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop this for right now. And when we are able to find a DLL hijacking vulnerability, we'll get a nice little box that says DLL hijacking found. And that's it for, or at least this particular demo. Back to you.
Yeah, I think that's super cool to automate some of that process, because scrolling through one by one in Procmon might be a little bit time consuming. So I think there's some cool reason to dig into DLL IRANT to check out some of those other tools. With that said, if you are putting together any of your own custom stuff, you will need to write, hey, some DLLs that you build in C or C++. And there are a whole lot of resources online to be able to help, offer this. Hactrix is one great one that you can honestly keep it easy. Hey, copy and paste code if you need to do all the sweet hacking stuff that you need. Let me grab the harness, let me build out my payload and get the detonator rolling. Very, very cool stuff. And Hactrix is, again, a great resource for folks that haven't seen it. There are others, without a doubt. I don't mean to be riding this horse for too long here, but I think it's very cool to see other resources that have kind of come to life that feel much like the LOL bins, like living off the land binaries reference, or GTFO bins for over on that Linux side. You might be familiar with that GitHub page and that website. A very, very recent one was hijack libs, and this showcases a lot of the native or common, at very least, utilities and DLLs that are provided by vendor ABC, product XYZ, even language or library module like Python or NPM, etc. And there's a very, very cool deep dive on all this sweet stuff. Credit where credit is due. This comes together from Vite. Forgive me if I'm getting your name wrong, my friend. But he put this together, presented it at DEF CON, doing some sweet research at CrowdStrike. And again, kind of a sweet one to take a look through. If anything, whet your appetite and see what you might be able to play with when you want to go tinker with these on your own. And again, I like that it's like a similar LOL bins or GTFO bins reference, and you can explore and see new things. Additionally, if you listening in are a big fan of those hands-on cyber war games or those practice online ranges, right? Try Hack Me, of course. Try Hack Me does have a room or a dedicated lesson and module on this technique specifically, DLL hijacking. They even get into a little bit of Empire with the command and control framework. Kind of a cool call out to the 0-day pre-day workshop we had just yesterday. And Hack the Box just as well. Hack the Box, I think, has more than plenty of machines if folks are interested in that war game. IPSEC, of course, another great creator that showcases a lot of this techniques and emphasizes how this can be used for persistence. Because if this application that you're targeting is running as like a service, like a background daemon job that's kind of, hey, lurking in the background, as soon as the user logs in or the computer starts back up, once that DLL is loaded, you've hijacked it and can get your arbitrary code execution. So that's pretty important to note, but again, resources that might be available to you. With that, I think it would be very, very cool to explore this a little bit further and do more and more show and tell. Darold, I know you were cooking together some pretty cool stuff, getting a proof of concept, reverse shell, and really a MVP, most viable product here, right?
He got the hard one this time. I took the easy route.
I took the easiest. Well, if you're fine with it, I'll let you take the stage, my friend.
Absolutely. So let me go ahead and list our directory contents. The first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that we look at what files that we have here on the screen. The first thing we want to do is we want to look what's inside of our DLL.C program. And inside of it, oh no, wrong program. We want to look inside of our hello.c program. Sorry about that. Hello.c, and inside of it, it's a very bare bones minimum basic C application. And what we're going to do is we're going to show what a very bare bones DLL hijacking attack looks like at the very basic level, right? So we start off with a basic C program that does nothing more than it includes a few libraries, initiates a main function, and then we start off. We initiate a variable that basically loads our DLL library. For this particular demo, we named it malware.dll. We're simulating what a malicious actor would do within our own particular machine. And if the DLL is found, we print out DLL found. If not, then we print out not found. Pretty simple, and then we return 0. Just kind of standard part of the language. Going to the DLL.C program. This is the port. This is the actual DLL file. Is also a very bare bones kind of applications in which and this is just the template that's required in order to get it to work. The only parts that are important about this particular program is if the DLL process is successfully attached, that we actually create a whoami file and we echo that to a specific path in the task in the task folder of Windows. And we also this is the the star line of code inside of the program. We basically call a PowerShell, a reverse shell, back to a simulated attacker's Kali Linux box. And then we print done and keep it pushing. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and compile it. We go to G++. We want to do hello.c, and we want to compile it to DLL.exe.
Hey,
So we're
Darold,
gonna go
while
ahead
that's
and
compiling, do you want to tell us what technique you're actually demonstrating here?
So we are using a missing DLL hello. We're basically we're going to be replacing. And we can actually show this in Procman as well. We can go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and clear because this is the ITMS sim service. Well, if we go ahead and apply a couple of the filters here, they're already here. So we're gonna take off these ones that apply to ITSM, Iterian, and we're going to look for DLL.exe. And we're going, in addition to that, we're going to say if it contains DLL and apply these particular filters. Hopefully it works. Hopefully it works. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just take all the filters off for now, start the capture, and then what I'm gonna do is go to the program. And let's go ahead and run it. So I'm gonna go ahead and run DLL.exe, and we can see that it says DLL not found. And we could go ahead and stop this capture and look for DLL.exe, apply the filter, and we can see that this particular program is actually looking for malware.exe. Is it in this folder? And it was mentioned earlier during this presentation. It starts with the directory that the folder is currently in, and it's in the Hackett first demo malware.dx DLL. So it's looking for, is it in this folder? Is it in that folder? And so this program is like, dare I say, thirsty for whatever this malware.dll file. So it would be a shame if there's hey, that's a nice file that you're looking for, Mr. Program. It'd be ashamed if you were to find it. You get what I'm saying? So let's actually go ahead and create that particular file. So right here, if you we looked at the content of it right here. Let's go ahead and compile it. And here's the command to do it. G++ DLL.c. We're going to give it the name malware.dll because this is the name of the program that it's looking for essentially everywhere, right? And we're also going to add this shared portion, and that's the option or for the G++ compiler to actually make it a executable DLL file. So this time I actually have the box already up and running. Look at that. I prepared the box while they were talking. Yeah. And so because we've attached this particular PowerShell command to this DLL process, once this particular code loads this DLL,
your web server.
If the demo works with us, please don't break on me in front of everybody.
Your web server's not running, Darold.
Oh, that would help out with. So let's go ahead and start that up. So we're going to do a Python dash.
We practiced this earlier today, and it took forever. So we're trying to shorten it up a little bit.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and start this web service. And if it all goes well,
the demo guys.
Running it this time should give us a reverse shell on our attacker box. Hopefully everything is working squared away. And if we go ahead and press enter on this, access is, oh no, I don't know what's, it says access is denied, but it looks like it still works. So I'm gonna go ahead and we are in motion. So one of the things I will verify is I'll go ahead and type in the who am I command, and in practice, this particular this would have given us a system level shell. However, because this is a bare bones application, it is not using the DLL I created is obviously not using the same DLLs that make system level calls that we showed in the process in the task manager earlier. It's because we're not using those particular DLLs, we don't have that same system level authority. But if you were to use this attack successfully on an actual application, you will essentially have full control over the machine. And that's it for today's demo. Back over to you.
Yeah, you could actually a couple of notes here while you're doing that. So the access is denied is actually because that who I am I command is trying to write to C Windows tasks in your not system, so you actually can't write there. That's actually why it was access denied there. And the other thing worth noting is this could be very easily used for initial access if you could somehow get a DLL somewhere. Like you don't have to use this to get privilege escalation. There are a ton of techniques you could use this thing for.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I love it. Thank you for the, hey, sort of primitive showcase here so we just know exactly what's going on. But now I'd love to push that envelope a little bit further when we were tracking this in a real, genuine application and software that MSPs and hey, maybe some folks listening in use. And we were tracking this with DIVD. Some folks know that those are the great fellows that we tried to offer, hey, some great funding for. I think we put Huntress gave like what $100,000 donation so we could keep bug bounty and security research growing in our community. And we're just super happy with everything that's come from it. And this, I think, is one shining example when DIVD and us kind of joining in. I hope they don't mind us tagging along and riding their coattails, but they're doing the real hard work here. They're seeing, ooh, this DLL hijacking is certainly prevalent, and we were tracking it just as Darold was showcasing with the Itarian Endpoint Manager, or the RMM. I believe he was rocking with a patched version, so let me add the disclosure that this is a patched vulnerability, but please let me give kudos and credit to Kyle, because he put together, Kyle Hansloven was building out this little demonstration video for you. And I hope this can light off some of the fireworks. Well, right now we're logging in as an unprivileged user account. We have a Kali machine, another, hey, hacker headquarters listening and creating a Netcat listener to catch the reverse shell and answer the phone. But we start to fire up the Itarian Endpoint Manager. Again, it's patch, can't say that enough. But you might have noticed over on the other side, we were digging into our backdoor factory because, and I realize the text is a little bit small here, so I'll try and cover this, but within the libraries that the Itarian software used, it would pull down a DLL for working with a database, SQLite, whatever. It doesn't exactly matter, but that had enough, I don't know, idiosyncrasies and gimmicks that we needed to try and backdoor or do some of that DLL proxying with that DLL. So it would match the criteria of the application. We're digging into services and we're noting that, ooh, that Itarian service is running. It is a local system, a background job, a daemon that's working in the operating system. And we could try to restart it, but we can't. We can't restart the service because we're a low privilege user. We can, however, restart the computer. So if we used the backdoor factory, gone ahead and actually backdoored that DLL file, placed it in the location that Itarian might have been looking for it, sure, I might still be logging in as my unprivileged user. But once that thing kicks off, we get the callback and we're system. There's our persistence. There's our privilege escalation. There is our compromise access. And I think one cool way to see this thing in action. But the fireworks don't stop there. Jason, I'd love to let you showcase some other sweet stuff that you were cooking up, right?
We'll go through the couple slides you got first here. So to give a little bit of context, and then I'll kick it off and then we'll come back. So this is one that came up while we were developing this talk. This is an old vulnerability, right? It first appeared back in 2020 in Cisco AnyConnect, right? However, in the past handful of weeks, it has seen new exploitation in the wild. And as an MSP, it's actually somebody that's been in the Cisco ecosystem for a very long time. I can say with fairly high certainty, people just don't upgrade AnyConnect. It's kind of a pain to do all the things you have to do to get the files onto the ASA so that AnyConnect updates to a new version. And pretty much every customer we take over that has ASAs, they're running some really ancient version of AnyConnect. It's just a pain in the butt. Go ahead and run to the next slide. So basically, there were a handful of vulnerabilities back, I think in like 2018, 2019, around how AnyConnect handles updates and how it uses this IPC channel to basically allow the AnyConnect UI to talk to some background services that it uses. It used to be the case that it did some insufficient validation, and you could actually use an IPC, just send messages, inter-process channel or inter-process communication. You could just send some messages and get it to run any arbitrary executable as system. Cisco thought they fixed it, right? They put a bunch of checks in. They started checking things like making sure that it was actually the correct file name. They checked that stupid things like that the author of the file, the executable you're running, was Cisco Systems Inc. They implemented some cert signing, right? And they thought they had this fixed. As it turns out, versions of any connect below 4.9, and even in 4.9, there are some versions that are vulnerable. I think it's below 4.9.084 and below 4.10. something. There was some sort of debug stuff left in the code, right? And it attempts to load a debug helper DLL file. And that debug helper DLL file, if it's not present, again, as we talked about earlier, this is a missing DLL vulnerability. It just goes on happily, presumably without debug helping capabilities. But if it's present, it will handily load it and it will handily run some code. One of the nice things about this is that this downloader actually downloads the updater that is responsible for this into app data temp. Into a randomly generated directory in app data temp. So we can do that, right? Like in theory, any user should be able to write to app data temp. So I'm going to kick this off. So caveat here, we're going to run through the first part of it. We're going to come back to it. One of the oddities of this exploit is that update doesn't always immediately kick off, right? So in my experience here on this system, it's been taking about 5 minutes to complete, but that had a weird side effect as I was troubleshooting it earlier. I rebooted the system while waiting for the callback to happen, and the callback came after reboot. So I had some sort of weird accidental persistence going on here. So, but I will kick it off here and we will do that. I presume at this point, I don't need to explain Metasploit anymore. I think I've done it in pretty much every single one of these things we've ever done. So I'm not going to explain it, but let's just go ahead and start our things here. I am going to run MSF console, right? We're going to fire up our Metasploit. Takes a second to load here. So once it runs, we're going to basically set up a quick and easy handler. Like I am not trying to find initial exploitation here. So we're going to cheat and we're just going to run. I've already got a payload on the system just to make life a little bit easier here. So I'm going to cut and paste some commands here to save some time because I type slow, especially when I'm on these things. And so just set some things up.
Give a little bit of air coverage, unless you got it.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. Hey, I just wanted to parallel this to our Netcat listener as we were doing before, just in case folks weren't all too familiar on the whole Metasploit framework. The options that we're setting here, like lhost, that's local host, right? That's our IP address while we're waiting to grab this, and where we're going to listen or answer the phone on that port 1337. And it looks like we're getting some of the past callbacks from Interpreter come through. Didn't even need to exploit the thing.
Yeah, so it would seem that I apparently have run this earlier and it was just waiting for it to come alive. So
that's one of the cool things about Interpreter.
Yeah, I'll run it again. So we'll use the new session just so we can see that it actually does it. One of the things here, there's a little bit of movie magic that goes on here. We for sure are disabling the Windows firewall. Where are they at?
Are you telling me the Windows Defender would catch this?
Windows Defender, I'm pretty sure would catch this. Okay, well that's not playing nice. So we're just gonna roll on. We'll use session 1. So let me just background this, right? So we're gonna go to the background here. So we've caught a shell, right? We've run our thing. We'll assume thing can get onto the system in any number of ways, right? Because that's not what I'm trying to demonstrate here. So I'm going to use exploits, Windows, local, AnyConnect, LPE. So one of the interesting things about this, and this isn't actually all that like tricky. It's not all that fancy. This exploit is old enough that it's just built into Metasploit. So when I started developing this talk, I went down this road of like trying to create the trying to actually create the code to do the IPC and all that other stuff. And then I came across, I'm like, oh man, if I could find a code sample, this would be way easier. And so I found some code and I'm like, wait, this is a Metasploit payload. So I'm like, we'll just do it Metasploit. Again, we're going to set our L port. We're going to set our L host, and we're going to set our payload. And we're going to run and cross our fingers. Oh, we have to set our session to set session 2. And we'll run. And it seems to be vulnerable. And I am going to come back now. So again, this has been taking about 5 minutes to run. And the reason that is that it doesn't actually immediately start the update process in all cases. It seems to be dependent on factors that I have not been able to understand. The VM I built to develop this was running this almost immediately. The 2 VMs I have built since then to try to troubleshoot this problem have each been taking between 2 and 5 minutes to run it. So let's cut back to you, John, and we will come back to this to see the fireworks here in a second.
All righty. Well, hey, we're getting to the last couple of things to touch on as part of the talk track here. But I hope it was kind of interesting, even within an hour. Like, oh, we still have 10 minutes left to spend some time together. We've been firing off a couple of these, I don't know, cooking show, movie magic exploits. But taking a look at what we built together to start, I don't think it's extremely difficult, right? Some of those low primitive examples here, we were able to explore and see we could recreate this. And I didn't mean to put that in just, oh, it's small, trivialized cage. That's not just in a box. I think it's important to note threat actors do this. Adversaries and hackers and cyber criminals and all the stuff we've already been chatting about. This is a little bit of a dated report. It's back in 2017, but there's a lot of really cool learning that comes from this. Folks were digging into APT10, maybe advanced persistent teenagers or whatever we'd like here. China-based threat actor in this operation, Cloud Hopper. Or we don't need to get into all the weeds here, but I think it's kind of fascinating because this adversary, this threat actor, targeting MSPs and managed IT service providers, right? You could see a little bit of their attack chain coming together here, and I don't mean to be beating us over the head with it, but ultimately, I want to zoom in on the fact that they're using this DLL hijacking technique for persistence, for privilege escalation, for everything else that they may do. And it's so wild to see they use this in so many different applications. You got what? I see a VMware icon in there. I see a Microsoft.net icon in there. Defender, McAfee,
whatever. How you ever say it.
What? If anything, I think that's kind of a cool showcase, and I hope that just offers a little bit of the notion that like this could very well be everywhere and prevalent and common. So with that, the rallying cry and call to action that I would like to offer. I don't know if Jason, how's your callback looking? Do you still?
It's still running. We'll keep going.
Okay. We'll banter for a little bit, but I want to drive the point home. You can do this. And I'd encourage you to like poke and play, fire up Procmon. And if I may, Jason and Darold, I'd love to call on you. Jason, I think you have a great vantage point. That's like, look, if you try this and you push hard against it and you're dedicated and determined, you will find a flaw. And Darold, I'd love to kind of pick your brain. Like, I know you've been spending a couple days driving through this thing, but now, like, it's easy to you, right? It's kind of the back of your hand.
I want to say that I spent a couple of days kind of learning the basics of DLL hijacking, and it didn't seem too like beyond the capacity of a normal person with kind of like technical knowledge. It is not this super overwhelming thing that it seemed like. I don't know if anybody else kind of looks at something like, well, what is DLL hijack? Clearly it's something beyond my capacity. And it just kind of seems super intimidating for me, or at least for me it was. And I just wanted to say it's not the most complex thing in the world. So I just wanted to say, and I did want to emphasize that to anyone who may or may not feel like that they never know enough. I just wanted to emphasize it's not a incredibly difficult thing to learn. And I also kind of wanted to say that to the MSPs out there as well that it's also not incredibly difficult thing to learn. So it's just as important to make sure that we're always defending against these kinds of attacks as well. And that's all I have to say about it.
Cool. I mean, I obviously have been on the soapbox for a long time. I can tell you pretty definitively that there are tools in our space that are vulnerable to this. Obviously, we don't want to come up here and pop ODAs on things, right? Like it's not a thing, but in some of the research that has gone on here and some of the learnings and things that go into developing these talks, I can say pretty definitively, I know there are tools inside of our space that are vulnerable to these techniques, and it's very scary to me because, as Darold pointed out, these are not necessarily, it's good now, John, by the way, where these are not necessarily hard techniques to learn, right? Like some of them, like I'm not going to say that they're all easy. I think both the Itarian one and the Cisco one are relatively complicated and convoluted examples. And I will say a lot of the big enterprise software that has like really good security teams behind it and other things like that, they have people and they have bodies in place that have cleaned up most of the low-hanging fruit. Right. But one of the things about, the huge growth and the startup kind of nature of, where we live in as an industry is that a lot of times security is third, and there is a ton of low hanging fruit that exists out there. And we need help. We need the rallying cry is there's a handful of us out there that are poking at that stuff. I've been screaming it to security researchers and anyone else who will listen to come look at our stuff. But we need more friendlies to help find stuff before the bad guys do, or it's going to be a bad day for a ton of us.
Well, cool. Let's see those lasting fireworks if you've got it.
Yeah. So it did finally run. There's no movie magic here. You can see the time it finished at 14:04. It started at 3:59. It wrote out. You can see here that it wrote into C users unpriv app data local temp to the temporary directory. It wrote the debug sent the stage. It took a bit for the updater to get a hold of it. But if we run get UID here, we are into NC authority system. If we pop a shell, we are on this box. Here we can do users unpriv. I think touch exists on Windows. Does it? Probably do hello. Nope. Cat hi.
You might want echo hi.
Yeah.
No worries.
Can you tell I'm a Linux guy? Windows. I should have been a PowerShell. Oh, it won't do it. It doesn't do escalate the thing, whatever. It just
then you would type hello.txt, but yeah, you're on the box. Absolutely.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
I'm definitely on the box. So we can, we can do this. We can do copy procmon.exe to hi.exe. And there we go. Hi exists now, right? So you can clearly see that I'm on this box. I'm administrator, and we can do some shady things to it. And, the reason that this exploit is being used in the wild is, as you can see there, you don't have to do anything fancy. It just kind of works. It just kind of works out of the box, and it's pretty cool, and it's actually really scary. So if I have a call to action here and you are an MSP and you have ASAs in your fleet and it's running a version ASA any connectable before 4.9, you should probably go patch. And even if you don't have support that can normally get you access to the updated client, they will give it to you for free because it's a vulnerability. Back to you, John.
Well, hey, I got to admit, that's our last slide for what we'll be diving through. We have just a few minutes left, I think about 2, in case there are any questions or comments or things that we would love to field from the chat. Jason, there is a peculiar question that it might be interest of you in the Q&A section, if you're able to pull that up, and if you'd like to carry that, totally up to you. But if there's nothing more, hey, that I hope is the call to action. Go play, I implore you, and go find something new, because that's the way that we can improve the security landscape. But if Kyle Hansloven is still hanging out with me, we can dive into the wrap up and get some lasting thoughts on Sweet Hackett 2022 day one.
You want me to try to answer that question real quick? Because it's easy. I don't know. There are almost certainly cases where, if properly configured, it would probably stop it. I question to what level most people would have it properly configured. And then depending on if it's using MD5 or other hashes, there are almost certainly ways we can do hash collision to match hashes anyways, right? So it definitely makes a level of effort higher, but I don't believe, I think the last talk talked about it a lot. Nothing is ever perfect.
Dave, Darold, Jason, thank you again and again. Darold, you did a phenomenal job, and I'm super duper happy to get you all up here for a little bit. So I think we did a great show. Kudos to you all.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to make sure I said thank you once again for the invitation. I did want to say it was definite. I wanted to say thank God. It was definitely a blessing to be here. Thanks once again. Appreciate it. Happy Hack It 122.